credit card spends have shot up about 33% to about 44,000 crore rupees, while RTGS transactions have surged 61% to 44 lakh crores. Through UPI and debit card spends, they though slipped. The overall transaction value still soared 46% on a year-on-year basis. Ankur Mishra, my colleague, is here with more analysis on those numbers.
Welcome to SBI Live Studio, and to assess how India is spending, we have analyzed the data ever since next-gen GST reforms have been implemented. That is the first 5 days of Navratri, with the last year data of October 3 to October 7, and comparable data is from 22nd to 26th of September. And what we have got, yes, India is spending where credit cards, whether you talk about NEFT or you talk about the RTGS transaction, there is a significant surge. Let's get started with credit card first. Credit cards upsurge is 33% to more than 44,000 crore if we add back the data of 5 days. And yes, if you talk about day one itself, that was 51% more than the last year. Apart from that, if you talk about the RTGS, there also significant surge is coming through all 5 days of Navratri. Whether you talk about day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, the increase is somewhere between 38% to 3%, and overall 61% surge is coming as far as the value of transactions of RTGS is concerned, and 44.92 lakh crore is the value of the transactions of RTGS only 5 days of 22nd to 26th of September. But there is a dip as well, where let's talk about UPI. A slight dip, I would not call it even a dip, because 2% less than if you compared with the last year, but overall they've sustained the transaction over 4,10,000 crore. Apart from that, let's also talk about the debit card. Yes, there is a dip of around 10%, but as far as value of transaction is concerned, it is just 6,792 crore. And there is one more dip in the data which was there for UPI as well as NEFT transactions. NEFT transactions have actually risen by 23% if you compare with last year. Overall, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, somewhere between 11 to 15%, but if you add back the data, it is 23%. But more importantly, as we analyze this data, one needs to keep in mind, last year, the first 5 days of Navratri was between Thursday to Monday. So a weekend was there in between, but this time we are only comparing Monday to Friday. The weekend is yet to come, and more importantly, the 10% less debit card spend can also be attributed to the fact the habits. More of these transactions are happening through UPI, and the value of debit card spend is just 6,000 crore. So all in all, yes, there is a surge in the value of the transactions, especially RTGS as well as credit cards, and overall data you can see more than 46% upsurge just 5 days of Navratri.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Ankur. Of course, great perspective, it's interesting to note that while debit card spends aren't really picking up at the outset, Aisha, given the data which Ankur just presented, credit card, on the other hand, is showing a very solid uptick. Of course, sustainability is one of the questions, but outside of that, the unsecured lending piece of
yes, I didn't want to say that.
of business seems to be doing better for banks, at least over the last week or so.
Yeah.
So that
was my first thought, actually. Yeah. But I was like, let me not jinx it. But yes, let's figure out exactly where all these spends are going, and we've got two gentlemen joining in to talk about exactly that. Lalit Bhise from Bizom, and we've got Abneesh Roy from Nuvama Institutional Equities to talk about exactly that. Lalit, hi, good to have you on the show. Let me first start off with you, because the last time we had you on the show, you had flagged a slowdown in white good purchases. And this was, of course, ahead of the GST rationalization. Post the implementation now, what's the pace of recovery since September 22nd? And has demand really made up for the earlier slowdown?
Hi, thanks for having me. From 21st, now we have just got data from the first week of post-GST benefits, so to say, 22nd to 28th. And in this whole white goods and consumer durables as a ecosystem, we are already seeing the volume pick up, right? So as you can imagine, since the prices have dropped, the value may not go up that high, but the volume is obviously caught up with it. So we estimate around 15 to 18% in terms of volume growth compared to last year, which might translate to approximately 5% in value growth this year. But these are obviously very early numbers as of right now.
Okay. Abneesh, let me come to you. Let me try and understand your take. You know, we had HUL come out and suggest that you'll have some difficulty coming through at the end of Q2 as well as at the beginning of Q3, which is the month of October. But overall, on an FY26 basis, do you expect strong demand to come through? Do you expect volume growth to at least see some bit of an uptick given everything that's been pushed through in terms of policy and reform?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, we do see that for FMCG, the recovery will be a bit later. And currently what's happening is two things have happened in September month. Post the GST announcement by the Modi government, next 2 weeks, the consumer was waiting for lower prices because he knew that prices will be lowered post September 22. And even the trade did not want to stock higher MRP because post September 22, they were having the issue that who will buy the higher priced product. Now what has happened, the transition is happening post September 22, and that's why HUL has said that even in October month, there could be some impact of the GST transition. Post that stability coming, we do see that in FMCG, the impulse categories like biscuits and snacks will see more benefit because of two reasons. Because in those categories, lower unit packs are very high, right? In snacks and biscuits, the 5 rupee, 10 rupee are quite big, almost 50-60% of the portfolio. So there the companies will add the grammage, so that leads to immediate addition to volume growth from say November. And second is consumer in these categories doesn't buy those in terms of grammage. He buys in terms of packs. Unlike that, if you see in toothpaste, etc., we don't see long-term much benefit of this because in toothpaste, yes, the lower unit packs will see higher grammage, but consumer is not going to really increase too much of consumption just because the toothpaste is say 10, 11% or 12% cheaper. So we see that the select FMCG will see benefit. Initially, entire FMCG, wherever GST cuts have happened, because lower unit packs will see more grammage. One more thing the FMCG industry is currently waiting is lack of clarity in terms of the inverted duty structure. Because what is happening is the services, the leases, and a lot of the raw material for HPC and even for food companies, if you see the services, etc., the GST rate is 18%, while the final product, finished product is at 5%. So there'll be that challenge. So my sense is currently companies obviously have passed on the GST pricing to the end customer, but at some stage they will go back to the drawing board and see how to incorporate this inverted duty adverse impact, because there is an adverse impact. So I think the recovery is there, but my sense is the impulse categories, paints, and maybe even the alcohol will see more benefits than something like a toothpaste or a toothpaste or say soap, for example. So there will be select cases where we'll see more benefit.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. Lalit, what is your own analysis? Are you seeing an uptick in discretionary categories like durables, fashion, home appliances? Which specific categories are seeing the highest traction according to you right now?
So that's a great question, right? So maximum volume growth, as we are seeing, is in category like home care, and that typically is a festive behavior. People invest more in cleaning and home care houses. We are seeing uptick in volume, like Abneesh mentioned, in confectionaries or chocolates as a category, for example. That's a great category. White goods, even fan, refrigerators. Those are the kind of categories where we are actually seeing a lot of uptick in general.
Sure. Abneesh, you did highlight and give us a little bit color, but just going in depth, which segments do you think would be, or rather would see the maximum uptick because of not just the GST rationalization, but also also the upcoming festive demand?
Yeah, my sense is paints, alcobev, bhujia, biscuits, etc. will see the higher benefit because obviously, as the participant also highlighted, some of these are linked to the festival. For example, the run up to festival, we do see a lot of painting happen. Alcobev again, we are seeing that there is a discretionary income which is increasing, so there will be some outlay increasing there. So these 4-5 buckets will see more impact. Even foods, other categories like noodles and pasta and chocolates, confectionery will also see benefit. So these are the segments where we'll see more benefit. Something like a HPC with the benefit will be on the lower side.
Lalit, do you believe that a large part of what we're seeing in terms of traction, both transaction-wise as well as possibly when we're going on ground and talking to some of the brick and mortar stores, is that just a bit of a rebound of all the pent-up demand that's been sitting? How much of this is sustainable, and what are festive trends really looking like? Give us that perspective.
Right. So you were talking about FMCG companies some time back, and let me just try and give you my heuristic perspective on the way the demand is coming up, right? The first week of GST 2.0 for large amount of FMCG companies was just about getting used to this new GST regime, right? So even, funnily enough, even the sacred price points like 5 rupees, I don't know whether you heard, but Parle reduced the 5 rupees to a little bit lesser, some 4 point something, 4.6 or something as a price point, which was a strange thing. To some of the FMCG companies even started to go away from that magic price points in the short term. The reason for that being that getting the supply chains, I mean, for increasing the grammage, you need to get the supply chains in place, and that's a time-taking process. So in 3 weeks, not all FMCG companies could get the supply chains in places. So some of them just even moved away from the magic price points with the same grammage. But some of them actually kept the magic price points while increased the damage. So there is a multiple movements happening as of right now. So from what I see is the first week itself, they're just getting used to this new GST regime. And from sustainability point of view, this is obviously the original. So in some categories like white goods, it was a pent-up demand, right? So there are 2-3 weeks prior to GST, we actually saw a little bit of a dip in consumption, which is getting caught up right now. Some categories like confectionery and home care are typically seeing the festive uptick in general. The usual consumption categories will not really, we did not even change prior to the GST, and I would be very surprised if they would change even post GST. At least in first weeks, it seems that it's in line with the usual festive. So the typical FMCG consumption is not going to change dramatically. I mean, some level of grammage and other stuff will happen, but value growth will be very hard to see there.
Avnish, barring, the near-term impact of the GST rationalization and companies passing on those benefits, where do you think the big structural shift will happen? Would it be in sort of upgrading? Would it be a move towards premiumization? Is it going to be tier 2 to 3 cities moving up the value chain? Or is it going to be largely the unorganized to organized shift which will, sort of get a push?
Yeah, good question. 4-5 key points here. One is I do expect popular price point 2-5-10 to fully come back. The current 4.7 rupee pricing, etc., are just a transition, and it makes no sense. There is no 4.7 rupee coinage, right? So we do see that the biggest benefit of GST rate cuts for FMCG is that 2 rupee, 5 rupee, 10 rupee, the life cycle for these price point has been elongated by 5 to 7 years, because there was a big question mark at 5 rupee, 10 rupee. How do you offer enough value to customer? Because of these cuts, I think next 5 years, the life cycle has increased, and we will see that the compliance increases, right? In many FMCG categories, there is a local unorganized players who are not part of the GST structure, but at 5%, they will not find enough reason to escape the GST system. And that's why we see a level playing field in many categories like bhujia, chocolates, and even in terms of biscuits, etc. So that's a very systemic shift. Third, of course, from a premiumization, clearly we will see that again, because disposable income, as we discussed, in in the previous participant, he was saying that almost 1.5 lakh crore initially the income tax rebates, and now this 50,000 crore kind of a GST benefit. Obviously, everything will gradually come to FMCG. So we do see that premiumization will get a benefit. We see HUL, for example, targeting almost 100 bps increase in premiumization almost every year. The fourth point will be essentially we'll also see that some of these will lead to operating leverage benefit in terms of the margins eventually once the inverted duty structure is also panned out. So so we see that the smaller towns and rural will continue to grow faster. Urban, which has been the big problem last 3-4 quarters, our sense is from November that will see recovery because of the GST rate cuts also.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. We'll let you go on that note, and of course we'll keep a close eye on consumption because that's the key theme to look out for, whether volumes really bounce back with a bit of a lag, likely. At least that's what the HUL commentary seems to indicate.
It's going to be all about Motown this week with the festive cheer now revving up India's auto retail sales. And FADA says that Navratri actually gave a big boost with sales jumping a good 15% overall as compared to last year. So let me take it across to Shrishti and find out what is it that we're anticipating this time.
Well, yes, auto sector has seen a very good surge in sales number. If we see the first 5 sales of Navratri, and these days have turned out to be really good for the auto sales sector because everybody has been waiting out to make those purchases on an overall basis across the sector. As we look at into the FADA data and the Vahan data as well, we get to see the auto sector has seen a surge of almost 15%. Now, along with that, it's the passenger vehicle segment that is seen to be taking the lead with almost a 20% jump. If we compare the first 5 days of Navratri sales as per Vahan, and there we get to see that the industry has actually registered vehicles of over 85,000, and on an year-on-year basis, it's a jump of 20%. This is to be followed by LCV segment, which is the second top gainer. Almost a 16% growth is what we have seen on that particular segment. When it comes to the two-wheelers space, a 14% growth. Three-wheelers have seen a surge of 13%, but it's a bit surprising that the MHCV segment is once again seen to be on the back foot with just 6% of gain coming in over there. And lastly, from the tractor division as well, a 10% growth is what the industry has registered. But do remember that this particular month, wherein the first half was actually affected by Shraddh period, and everybody has been waiting out to make the purchases after 22nd of September, and that's what we have seen on the number front as well. To all the industry experts we keep talking, they are optimistic that it will continue for quite some time. It will stretch to Dussehra as well as Diwali is also expected to be a blockbuster for the auto sales data this time around.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Srishti. That, of course, gives you a perspective on what to expect with regard to the auto numbers. But who better to bring in with regard to expectations than CS Vigneshwar, who's obviously part of FADA. He's the president at FADA. Mr. Vigneshwar, let me start off by understanding from you, post the 22nd, of course, we've seen an unwind of everything that's been pent up over the last 20 days. It's Shraddh plus the fact that everyone was awaiting the lower rates with regard to GST. Talk to us about customer trends, first off, to start with. How are customers behaving? You have a great pulse of what's happening on ground. Are they preferring to upgrade the cars that they were earlier inquiring for? Are they looking at a better brand of cars? Give us that perspective to start off with.
Thank you so much. First of all, congratulations to the Indian team for getting the Asia Cup. And I think it's a great start to the week. Yes, it's like the opener is already getting most of the job done. You and Srishti have spoken about the figures, you've spoken about the trends. So as the middle order batsman, let me add something. Yes, we have seen the premiumization happen because more customers are moving to slightly more premium variants of the same model. We also seen that some customers have actually moved to a completely different model, which is one segment upwards. But However, we need to see this for a few weeks and a few months to see whether this is a sustainable trend. We've also seen a lot of activity in the entry-level segments for the two-wheelers and the four-wheelers, the passenger cars. We've been having a lot of headwinds in the last couple of years in the entry-level models for the two-wheelers and four-wheelers. We've seen a lot of movement happen here, which is very encouraging. What is very important in our industry is that the entry-level segment does well. The moment the entry-level segment does well, this not only garners sale for that particular period, but it also develops a larger base for the future for moving up one level higher. So I think that started happening, which is great, which wasn't happening for the last couple of years. And one of the reasons why the market was a little bit dull for the last couple of years is also price, especially in the urban areas. Right now, we have seen the price cuts happen, so we've seen a lot of excitement in the urban areas. Rural demand has been quite decent for the last few years, and it would continue to grow strong. But the urban customer is stepping in to move the industry much higher.
Right. Okay. That's great perspective to start off the conversation, but also wanted to understand really, when it comes to what really are the trends are, because, Navratri 2025 sales are up about 15%, like Shrishti was just highlighting, during the first 5 days itself. And as per the Vahan data, passenger vehicles and two-wheeler segment is seeing the most amount of excitement. How do you think this trend is going to pan out post the festive season?
These GST reforms, Aisha, is going to work for a few years. It's not going to be about a festive season or a quarter. It's quite landmark in its thinking, and it's quite seismic in its effectiveness. So I think it's going to pan out well for the next few years at least, if not longer. The price of vehicles have been going up quite significantly in the last 4 or 5 years because of emission norms, because of safety norms, etc. And our salaries in urban areas were not keeping pace. So with this cut, I believe that the urban customer will be back in the game to drive the industry and to meet their mobility requirements. So it's going to be great even beyond the festive season.
Why is the CV demand still lagging? All the excitement is around passenger vehicles and two-wheelers, but if you look at the MHCV segment, for instance, because that's the data we have, that's really showing nothing.
To put it in a very simple perspective, a two-wheeler and a four-wheeler are very impulsive, emotional purchases. It's like buying yourself a burger. So if you feel hungry, you go and get yourself one because you desire one. But getting yourself an LCV or an MHCV would be like getting yourself a microwave or a cooking stove. So this is more of a business purchase. So the prices have just come out. The negotiations for the prices will be taking place between the customers and the dealership, and also the deal needs to be worked out with financiers in mind. So it takes slightly longer, but I'm sure the commercial vehicle industry would soon catch on, along with the construction equipment industry. They've been doing quite well. And more importantly, the tractor industry, which has been doing really well, would continue to do well.
Okay. What are you seeing in terms of two-wheeler demand, Mr. Vigneshwar? Give us that perspective. Are we seeing a bounce back? Are we seeing upgrades from 100cc to 125? Are those visible trends at a ground level that you're seeing?
It's going to be a two-horse race. You are right. From one point of view, there would be a premiumization which happens. People move to the higher CCs. Of course, the 350cc plus is the only segment which the GST has gone up. But at the same time, apart from the premiumization which is happening, you're also seeing that the entry-level two-wheelers do well because of the price cuts being mostly, the highest in the lower category segment. So it'll do well. I think the manufacturers also are quite aggressive with the prices. The dealers are quite hungry to do business. I think the entry level will do really, really well, along with the second horse of the premiumization of the industry.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's the first sign of revival which has come by in the Motown numbers, and it's so good to see that, or rather relief actually to see that. But Mr. Vigneshwar, great to have you on ET Now. Thanks as always for your time.
Thank you.